So hello and welcome to the Practice Product Thinking workshop. I'm Bridget Thorson. I'm the Member Collaborations Editor here at INN. And whether or not you're currently involved in product work at your newsroom, today we'll be exploring what it means to incorporate product thinking into your work in your time together. So our facilitators had lined up an action-packed participatory workshop for our time together today. So as you can, please get ready to jump right in. So with that, I am delighted to introduce our facilitators for today. We've got Emma Carew-Grovum and Becca Aronson of the News Product Alliance, and I will hand the mic right over to you.
Hello, it's great to see everyone. I'm very excited to be here. So let's get started. So Emma and I have kind of a vast background in working in news organizations. I've predominantly worked in nonprofit news, first at the Texas Tribune for 8 years, and then at Chalkbeat, where I was the director of product. I left last year to co-found the News Product Alliance, which we'll tell you a little bit more in a bit. Emma, do you want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Emma. I've been a journalist for about 12 years. I have had a lot of different random roles inside of news organizations, from reporter to digital producer, social media and audience engagement, regular editor, all the way up through being an AME, and then spent some time on the product side and am now the founder of Kinbot Media, where I run consulting for product strategy, executive and coaching, and DEI strategy.
Awesome. Yeah, one of the things that Emma and I have in common is we both started off in the newsroom and then migrated into product work. So we like to say that anyone can be a product thinker. The News Product Alliance, where we both work, Emma is the program director there and I'm the interim ED, is a community of support and practice for news product thinkers. Support being the connections and the conversations that you need to have to excel in your career, and practice being the unique discipline of news product management, learning the skills and the things that we need to do our jobs better every day. So our mission is to elevate the discipline of news product management and expand the diversity of news product thinkers in decision-making roles. If you would like to learn more, you can go to newsproduct.org and sign up for our email list. So what is product thinking? I like to think of product thinking as really a form of problem solving. It's a framework or a set of tools to connect the dots between the editorial, audience, business, and technology strategy. So product managers are the people who are doing kind of the work of guiding product development in the news organization. And you don't need a product title to be a product thinker. Anyone can use the tools that we're talking about in your newsroom to apply product thinking.
So we wanted to do a quick chat-based exercise to get everyone kind of introduced to each other, get your brains thinking in this manner. So if you think through the way that your role works, where do you intersect with audience data? Where do you intersect with the business side? When do you collaborate across disciplines in your organization? And that's what makes you a product thinker. So I'd love to see some "I'm a product thinker because" statements in the chat. So we'll take a few minutes right now, think about where those intersections are in your day-to-day work, and think about what makes you a good product thinker. Example in, and so we can just keep rolling.
Awesome.
What I'm seeing so far looks really strong. Because I'm the fulcrum and the bridge, my work crosses different teams. Journalism engagement and business innovation are what we do. Awesome. You guys have nailed it.
Awesome. Great. So the first exercise we're going to do today is a little bit about prioritization and how to make the difficult decisions about what to do first. Emma, do you want to share here a little bit about how you prioritize?
Absolutely. So this is one of those tools that I use, this matrix, which maps urgency against importance. Another way you can do this is mapping effort versus impact. How long or how difficult is something to perform versus what is the impact on the organization, on the progress towards the goal. You can also do stack ranking or labeling things such as by urgency or by how large, medium, or small the task is. Like you could use t-shirt sizes or dog sizes. I like the urgent versus important because what it allows you to do is ignore one quadrant entirely. So anything that you put in this bottom right-hand corner that's not urgent and not important, you don't have to do. And that is like one of the big wins of product thinking and prioritization, is it helps us to understand like, why are we doing this? And does it matter? And does it make it, does it affect our bottom line? Does it help us reach our goals? And does it help us improve the work product ultimately?
Yeah, and I think journalists do this work every single day. I mean, we're constantly bombarded by potential breaking news scenarios, and we have to balance those between longer term investigations or other work that we have on our plate. And so this is just a tool that can help you do these conversations as a team. And so like one example is I have literally drawn a giant matrix on a wall and used sticky notes with my team to have them place major projects in these quadrants. And then we can use it to have a conversation. So you can use this as an individual tool, or you can use it as a team tool to have these conversations together.
You can even apply it back to journalism, right? So many things that we have on the product side really can help make the journalism and editorial side more efficient, right? So we've all sat through those news meetings where they're trying to put up the website for tomorrow or plan A1 for tomorrow. And really what they need to do is just to use an urgent and important matrix to help them understand where should the stories be played and who gets to, what gets elevated to the top. So learning to say no is really important, because what we talked about previously is that there's this area where you're not going to do things. And so this links out to a really good piece by Becca that walks through some ways to say no within reason, right? Which it could be like, I'm going to defer you because we have something very urgent and deadline based right now. You could also try to help them find someone else who might be able to help you. So you could say like, I'm not the expert in this, but Becca really is. And I would encourage you to go speak with her. But ultimately, sometimes you just have to say like, we don't have bandwidth for this right now. It's a great idea and I wish we could do it, but here are the reasons why we can't bump it to the top of the list.
Yeah. And sometimes learning to say no is also learning to ask when it really is necessary, because it could be something that's just not urgent, but it is important. And so figuring out how to put it in the back of your backlog or your list of things to do and come back to it later. But if you can't say no to things, then you're not going to be able to have room to say yes to the things that really are the most important. So let's do some practice of this together. So we're going to do an exercise where we're going to break everyone up into groups of, I don't know, like 3 to 5, 4 groups of 4. Great. And we're going to give you a list of 5 different potential product ideas that you might come across in a newsroom. And we want you as a team to put these in an urgent and important matrix. Back, everyone. As Emma was just saying, she's put a prompt in the chat to tell us about what surprised you from this exercise or things that you learned. So as we move on to the next exercise, if you'd like to share different things that came up for you, please do. We'd love to hear them. Yes, or what was difficult. Great.
Yep, Laura, spot on, right? And in a larger form of this exercise, everyone is assigned to a role. And so one of you would have had to argue for the ad ops team, and somebody would have had to argue for the editorial team. And when we have more time for that exercise that's longer, it gets real contentious as people start to embody those roles. But do you want to bring the slides back up, Becca?
Yep. Perfect. Great.
So from what we saw, like you guys did a great job with this exercise. We saw, some of the back and forth things, people move things back and forth. The chat looks like you guys really nailed it. So we're thrilled to see this.
Great.
So now we have all of our great ideas prioritized. The next thing to do is to put it against a roadmap. So a roadmap visually communicates all of the tasks, deadlines, and deliverables necessary to meet a goal or execute a product vision. So this helps you have the vision, the clarity, the milestones, and the prioritization in one easy to view component. So next slide, please. This is a couple of examples of what your product roadmap or any roadmap could look like. This is a Gantt style chart where it's put in Google Spreadsheets, and you can see it's spread out by quarter and month. And then they have these yellow areas for ramping up a project, a green area for how, when a project is going on, and a red section for winding down a project. So you can see over time how the projects are going to overlap, which teams are going to be involved, and what resources are going to be needed in which order and where the dependencies are. This is another project to-do list that's in an Airtable. And again, you can see it's grouped by in progress, tasks that are blocked, tags that you're going to be starting next. They have some deadlines and tags in here. They have who is assigned to. So your system can be as sophisticated or simple as you want it to be. It's really about what works for your team. So I've used Trello for this. I've seen people use Airtable for this. You can use, you know, a whiteboard with sticky notes. It doesn't really matter as long as you pick something that you can all work with together.
Yeah, the most important thing about a roadmap is that it communicates effectively what your vision is so that the team can stay aligned and work towards that product or project together. So how do you break down a big idea and start putting it into a roadmap? Well, first you should start off with the goal or the highest level vision. Like, what is it that you are trying to achieve? What is the objective that everyone can rally around? And so you all know kind of like where that finish line is. Next, you might break it down into projects. So these are kind of multi-step things that require collaboration between multiple team members. It could be starting a newsletter, or it could be making an upgrade to your CMS. But these are kind of like the, you know, the bigger things on your roadmap that do require collaboration among multiple people, likely in different roles or functions within the organization. And then finally, you have your tasks. These are the things that you can assign to a single person to execute. And it's a contained amount of work that can't be broken down any smaller. Tasks are things that are much easier to scope. We can say, okay, this is a half day, this is a day, or like, you know, get a sense of how long the work will take. And so you can kind of bundle tasks up into projects to get a better sense of then going backwards the longer time frame. So when you're setting up a roadmap, like I said, this is a communication tool. This is the tool that you're using to keep everybody aligned as you work towards executing your product vision. It's very helpful to have structured data. So the things that we always like to include in our roadmaps are the status of a task or project. Is it done? Is it blocked by something else? Is it in the works? Are you working on it right now? Or is it scheduled for later in the month? How important is it as a priority? What is the scope? Like Emma said, with the priorities, you can use t-shirt sizes, or you can use a numbering system to kind of give yourself a sense of the scope and the amount of work that it's going to take. And then, like all good journalists, you're going to give things a deadline, or at least start to scope out your timeline so that you know kind of what things have to happen sequentially. And finally, who's going to be assigned to what? Roles and responsibilities. This is really important too for figuring out who's actually approving something at the end, like who has the final say, and whose ideas are important, but maybe they're just consulted or they're informed about something and they need to be kept up to date, but they're not actually responsible for it. So roles are really important. And the biggest thing that you can do is just like create a system and then stick to it, and make sure that you have a process in place for keeping your roadmap updated and keeping people attentive to it as they use it to kind of keep their own work on track. So we are going to do something fun together. Emma.
So we're going to plan a little party. So I would love for folks to either put in the chat or just unmute yourself and call out, what are some tasks that come to mind? And I'll type them in the slides. What comes to mind when it's time to plan a party in terms of tasks and in terms of helpers? So what's the work that needs to be done and who is on our team? Feel free to type in the chat or go ahead and unmute. Okay, so I'm seeing stuff come in.
Invite the desks.
Yep, send invitations, make a menu. We need someone to set up. We need someone on cleanup. Book a venue. These are great. So your party helpers might be like someone like your spouse, your kids, if you're so lucky enough to have a small workforce in your home. It could be, is it a potluck? Could be, that's not how you spell that. Could be waiters that you hire, cleaners,
Booking a
caterers.
venue.
Yep. Caterers, food prep. Could have friends and neighbors help. Perfect. Okay, so do you want to switch to the next slide, Becca? Oh, you did. Awesome. So we're going to take those tasks and we're going to put them against this plan. So what has to happen before the party? And what has to happen during the party? And what has to happen after the party?
So we have to send our invitations and make our menu and set up. All of these are before the party.
Whereas cleanup is after the party. We didn't have DJ the playlist, but that could happen during the party. Serve the food. Okay. So how do we create urgency and how do we create roles for folks to do these different types of party planning? What would you do first? If anyone wants to go ahead and unmute and tell us.
Decide on a person's strengths.
Smart. So if your kid can't drive, then they can't be the ones to go pick up the food, right? If someone's afraid of rubber, they can't be the one to pick up the balloons, right? Absolutely. So strengths, weaknesses, logistics, right? Like what's true about this person? Do they live nearby? Do they have a car? Do they, are they going to walk that they're going to hold the dog for you while the party's at your house? Do they have capacity and bandwidth? Absolutely. You guys are nailing this. So you can kind of see as we fill this grid out, right? We could say, okay, so we're going to have our printers, we're going to have our caterers, we're going to have our event planner. And these are all pretty urgent, right? They all have to happen or we're not going to have a party. Another way we describe things like this in product is that they're dependent upon each other. So they're dependencies or they're blockers, right? So we can't send the invitations until the venue is booked. So actually I'm going to move the venue up the list and send invitations down the list, right? Whereas you have to have the menu in place before you can do the food prep, right? Things like this. Does anybody have any questions about how this works or how this is working in this exercise? Okay. So that basically brings us to the end of the formal presentation and we'd love to open it up for questions. I know we covered a lot of ground, so feel free to ask us anything that makes sense to you.
I wonder if you guys could give some real life examples of products that you've worked on and how you used these tools or what you learned from those experiences.
Yeah.
You want to go first, Becca?
Sure. Lots of examples. So I think the main ones in a newsroom that I've worked on are newsletters, membership, CMS, website, and like story pages and the homepage. I think a lot of the times the journalism itself is kind of a product. So if you think about a series or a beat as a product, it can really change the way that you approach it. So, for example, when I was at the Texas Tribune, when I was at the Texas Tribune, they launched a series called Texplainer, which was like explaining, it's like a service journalism type explainer series. But that itself is a product, even though it is a form of journalism, because you have to know who is the audience for this, what kind of what is our content strategy, how are we publishing it, what is the format, how does it, what features do we need in the CMS, all of these things. So any idea, essentially, if you're productizing it, you're thinking about what is like the platform or all of the things that need to go into putting this journalism out into the world.
So another example that I worked on is a photo gallery tool, right? We had a lot of ad hoc one-off custom templates for building photo-driven stories. And it really wasn't working for our team because we had so few developers and it was custom every time. And it was different every time. We couldn't recycle it. So we moved to productize that type of storytelling by creating a photo gallery tool that would integrate it really easily in any aspect of our CMS. So it didn't matter if you were putting it on a breaking news story, on a regular story, on the long form template of the story, you could use that photo gallery everywhere and it was a recyclable piece of code. Any other questions we can answer?
Not so much a question, but a comment just on the last point that you made. Sometimes you've got to prioritize those things, those little pieces of development, whether you're talking software development or, just automating a spreadsheet or something. But sometimes the things that you do routinely, and you could just, if you could just spend time building something that would actually make life so much easier in the long run. It's one of these things that you kind of continually kick the can down the road, but actually if you can take the time to prioritize those small, supposedly small things, it can make a big difference long term. So thinking about them as a product is maybe helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's really like the hardest part and the biggest trick of being a product thinker in a newsroom is like, it's never as simple as just planning a party. Like there are probably 10 to 15 different ideas and products running at the same time and trying to figure out kind of like what the needs are for each of those scenarios and then prioritizing them against each other is really hard, especially when you need for some of those things to have larger investments like changes to your tech stack or your CMS or bring in a new tool that you can't just do on the fly. You need to spend some time investing in it. And so that's why figuring out a way to have these conversations about what to prioritize and visualizing all of that work for the newsroom can help you have those conversations when people come to you with an idea and say, well, this is how it fits in. This is the give and take. This is how we have to move things around because the whole system is essentially connected. And we only have so many resources that you can handle.
Part of being a product thinker, I think, is the ability to look at the big picture and see not only the pathway forward for your individual project, but your role in shepherding that work through at the execution level.
Awesome. Well, if you were inspired or you do any of this kind of work yourself, feel free to join us at newsproduct.org. We're going to be opening up our Slack probably in about a month to more people. And we have a newsletter right now, which we're going to send out our next edition of our How I series, where we share career interviews with people about how they do product and what their careers have looked like later this week. So feel free to sign up. And yeah, any other questions? We're here if you guys have any other thoughts.
I just want to thank you. Oh, go ahead, Emma. Go ahead.
Sorry, I did. If we have time, one last one.
Yeah.
It may be putting you on the spot. I'm terrible of thinking of examples like this on the spot, but I was just curious if you could think of one where you went through your process and said, no, this is not a product we want to pursue, and what triggered that.
Yeah, so I built a latest news module for in my last newsroom. We were like, there's no way to tell what the latest story is, right? Like we have timestamps in some places, not in other places. So we tested this module. It did really well. We all liked it, but ultimately it pushed down our programmatic ads too far, and we ended up losing a lot of money on it. So although it was driving people to a second click, we were still not monetizing on the whole page well enough to support that new product. And so it was, although it was seemed very urgent, it turned out to not be very important because it was going to lose us money. So in the long run, we built it, we tested it, we ran it for 3 weeks, we did all this analysis, it was performing super well, and then ad ops came in and it was like, can't have it. And we just had to scrap, 6 weeks of work.
That's a great example, Emma.
it's really sad in my heart, but it is a really good example.
Yes, I noticed you were able to come up with that right away. It's painful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Becca and Emma, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise in product thinking and activating us all to think about how we are product thinkers in our own organizations. And thanks to our participants for sticking with us and going through this exercise. I really appreciate your participation.